Thank you very much, Professor Farouk. It was really enjoyable. Now we can take comments. Doc, Dr. Salah, the podium is yours. In a minute, we'll start receiving questions. Thank you, Engineer Tarek. I really enjoyed the talk of Professor Farouk Albaz. I like to enjoy his dialogue and the backgrounds of him that we always enjoy listening to. The development of the desert has been a talk for 40 years, and we were hesitant how to develop the desert. The Eastern Desert is about 20, constitutes 20% of Egypt's area, and the Western Desert area, the Western Desert constitutes 80, the remaining 80%, and we are living on about 5 to 7% of Egypt's total area. At the same time, internationally, we have the quantity of water, 97% of the rivers, oceans, and salt water, and 3% only is fresh water, which is divided into two groups. Rivers constitute 1% of the 3%. The underground water to 20% of the 3%, and the ice mountain constitutes 73% of the fresh water. So we have a very limited quantity of fresh water. That's why the world, because there is a war on fresh water everywhere in the world. So the whole world now is thinking, how about developing not only the desert, but our country with salinated water. It is an international trend nowadays, so people started to think, hey, how about considering the uses of salinated water? China, a long time ago, started to cultivate rice from salinated water, and succeeded in cultivating great areas of rice on salinated water, and started to transfer this technology outside China, and started to make two farms, one in Emirates and one in Israel, cultivating rice, growing rice on the salinated water. This is very important. The second one, which is also essential, is Holland or the Netherlands. You know that in Europe there is a decision to ban the manufacturing of plastic bags from petroleum, because according to in 2050 the number of plastic in the sea is going to be greater than the number of fish. So in 2018 they issued a decree in Europe which prohibits the use of synthetics, and started to produce biodegradable plastic which is made of potatoes. That's why Europe imports the highest quantities of potatoes in order to start the new program shortly. The Netherlands succeeded to cultivate potatoes on salinated water, and it has already produced. The third essential point that we have to think of together today, there is a plant called zirconia. This zirconia is available in South America, South Africa, Asia, and in many countries. This plant also grows on salinated water. We're talking about 30 to 35,000 parts of a million. This zirconia is a plant eaten in America. It ranges from 7 to 12 dollars per 1 pound. It has a quantity of fats, fibers, minerals, and vitamins. Not only this, they take its seeds that they produce oil from, which is similar to sunflower and maize oils. This plant is available now worldwide. It's cultivated on salinated water, salt water. So people started to stop and think, why don't you grow all the crops with the use of salt water? In Egypt, we have an experience and a history of cultivation on salt water, but it's unexploited. The Red Sea coast there is a tree called mangroves, which is a protection. It's because it's a shelter for fish. They can live under and lay eggs there. I don't care about this protected area, but this mangrove tree leaves can be used as fodders, very high value fodders for the sheep, the goats, and its wood can be used. It's very beautiful that it can use as synthetic wood. So the whole world started to think of the optimal use of salt water because it constitutes 97% of water on Earth. One day we have already reached the water poverty level. The individual capita of what was 1000, now it is 65 cubic meters per year, and it's going to go down more and more. So there is a shortage of fresh water. In the eastern desert, we can establish urban communities, such as we can start with cultivating 1,000 fedans of rice, 1,000 fedans of potatoes, 1,000 of cyclonia, and a forest of mangrove. I'm talking about a forest. That's to say, a sustainable forestry, which is a very important term because I can't start a forest which I start to use. No, in the first 1,000 fedans, I take them into stages 200, 200, 200, 200. That's to say, after 5 years, I can take off the first 200 because what is it? It's just a seed. It's frequent in the Red Sea coast. If I want 1 million of them, I can get them in 3 minutes. So I can deforest the first 200 meter, 200,000 meters, and then replace them with cultivation. This is known worldwide as sustainable forestry, from which I can take two things: synthetic wood. So far in Egypt, we have only one single factory of synthetic wood. The whole world has 10 or 15 factories of synthetic wood. There is already one investor who is starting this business, but very simply, on the Red Sea coast, we can start. We can start with the Eastern Desert. We can have complete cities that work on the salt water. They can be tourist cities, then agricultural cities, and then industrial cities. I can make build factories and build more facilities. I have the fodders. I can have farmlands for the animals. We have more beautiful things. We can establish microalgae, and we introduced the first one in Egypt in the engineering arm of the armed forces started them because it has three privileges. First of all, it is a human food. We have Chad Lake where they take spirulina. They eat spirulina, which has 62% of protein. So the marine macroalgae is very beautiful that we can use as human food, as concentrates of fodders for the fish and the poultry. As soon as I grow the farms of microalgae, it's very easy. If we think of the Chad Lake, which is 120 or 130 years ago, someone just threw some spirulina. Now they can harvest the spirulina in very large quantities. They are using them in a primitive way. America now is using this technology with high tech. Anyone who goes to a drugstore, he takes the food supplements of spirulina at $30. It's available worldwide. What's really more important is that this algae can be used as fuel. The algae can be used as fuel, and it is the best biofuel all over the world. 2.5 years ago, Germany established the first building, which is called Net Zero Energy Building, which has high efficiency of the solar cells. It's less costly and less demanding in maintenance. That's why its economics is better. So Germany said in 2030 the percentage of renewable energy will be more than 50%, and I think that's the main reason is the macroalgae. In British Petroleum Company, it is used. There are about 3 billion US dollars for research, which is called the Beyond the Petroleum. This is the alternative. You can get biodiesel out of it very easily. So the macroalgae will be used as fuel, will be used as fodder for as considered human food, and we can make farms and also for Artemia. We have only one farm introduced by the army 2 years ago. Artemia's protein is 93%. It grows on salt water with the sun. So inside the city, we can have farms of fish, farms of animals of all kinds, farms of poultry, and we have the basis, which is the material or the fodder of these creatures. That's why I say along the coast of the eastern desert, we can establish integrated cities where there is a tourist area, agricultural area, industrial area. You can take the materials and start to produce them and export them to Cairo or to other cities that need such products. I believe this is one of the best solutions in the eastern desert, and very easily inside these cities you can have a research center. It's going to be a science and technology park, because there must be for the sea agriculture. Let's go to the western desert. It's a different story. Just give me 2 more minutes. I won't take much time. In the western desert, we have something called the Qattara Depression. We have been talking about it for 90 years now. And the first one who managed it was Gamal Abdel Nasser. There was it was there until Sadat in 1995 said that Qattara Depression will be our top project. He means Mubarak, of course, because Sadat was killed in 1981. And then Hosni Mubarak cancelled the administration of Qattara Depression in 2014. President Sisi issued a presidential decree to the Minister of Electricity to form a committee to implement the project of Qattara Depression. In 2016, the Prime Minister formed a ministerial committee headed by the Minister of Electricity in order to implement the project of Qattara Depression. What is the problem? Everybody is talking about it for 90 years. It's only one technical problem. There are so many problems. Qattara Depression will use the difference in height between the Mediterranean Sea and the depression. That's it's 134 below sea level. So as an average, we can take from 70 meters, which is considered the biggest water energy project in the world. We can take power from it. But the problem is that when I take the sea water to the depression, it will go up. So this delta H will go down. So it means that I'll have energy today, and the energy will be less next year, and ultimately there will be zero energy. This is the basic fear, to invest billions in a project after a short time of which it will disappear. Let's think the same idea or apply the same concept of the eastern deserts. When they calculated the evaporation rate of the depression, they said it's not enough for the recycling of water. If we take this water and then we build the cities on the use of salt water, so the rate of the flow of water will continue and it's going to be sustainable. So that's why I say very simply, if the depression of Qattara's project is implemented, we'll say let's say for example the underground water will mix with the salt water of the depression. There's no problem, because the creatures can live there. I mean, in the blackish water, its concentration will be higher. It can bear the salinity of 30 and 35,000 parts per million, and the whole world is working on it. It's not an invention of the or reinvention of the wheel. Technology is there. If we transformed the seeds of rice in order to be used in the salt water. After that, we can take the seeds, and this applies to potatoes and mangroves, etc. In order to develop eastern and western deserts that constitute a big area of the Egyptian land, we have to make the best use of using the technology of desalinating seawater in agriculture. The energy that will generate in the eastern deserts will be biofuel from biomass from microalgae or biomass of agriculture. The energy we'll take from the western desert is mainly water power or the hydro power. As a source of energy, it's there. As a source of agriculture, it's there. As a source of living, we can transfer all the people to these areas because these will be integrated cities. The fear is that life in eastern and the western deserts will be so beautiful, and they will leave, immigrate from Delta and the Nile Valley to the eastern desert, and then will have no people or population on the Nile and the Delta. It's a joke, actually. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry for taking much of your time. Thank you, Dr. Salah, Dr. Ahmed.
Dr. Ahmed, after what has been said by two great scientists, the voice is not clear. The speaker, well, the interpreter, the translator can't convey every word because he speaks in a so low voice and the microphone is so distant from his mouth. I'm sorry. The problem with long-term projects, in my opinion, is the lack of a government policy. And this is actually can be attributed to the fact, ascribed to the fact that the findings or the result or outcome of which can only be seen after long years, long period ahead. So the government official would make a decision, the impact of which will likely to appear in 2 or 3 years' time. We should be concerned with future generations, not only with the present generation or but forthcoming generations in general have to be looked upon. We have been working on an economic zone. The issue of water is so dangerous issue, risky, so risky. And the issue of water has to be dealt with within an integrated plan rather than in a partial way as we have been seeing. So we'd like to know who is responsible, who should be tasked with having a look at long-term plans. This is what have you listened to him? What he has said is so important. Yes, this is the only thing that can be replied to the what he has said. The government policy looks upon only shorter term plans rather than longer term ones. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Farouk Al-Baz. I'd like to also extend my profound thanks to him for having kindly accepted our invitation to make us enjoy his talk. Together, we also extend my gratitude to the other panelists as well. For myself, I've been deeply concerned with the future. I agree with you that the Nile River and the Nile River Valley have their own ancient charms. We have been encharmed by the Niver. Egyptians have long been encharmed by the Nile River and the valley surrounding, all parallel to it. We have a lot of questions which have to be answered. The cost. One important question is the cost of this project of the development corridor. Will it be applicable? Could it be implemented at some stage, or remain only a plan on paper? Number two, will there be plans will be devoted to it or not? Because Egypt has already started on the Suez Canal economic zone and similar other zones or regions of special nature in Egypt. So, will anybody be taking care of such a development corridor or not? Are we going to implement the development corridor in the same way we have been dealing with other projects in the country or not? Of course, the problem is partially ascribed to the lack of a master plan. A master plan would have involved all these projects, the development corridor, the Suez Canal plan, and so on. So, will the lack of the master plan will be harmful or not? Going and there have been two ways of going into the desert, either to sprawl on already existing structures in the desert and then become adjacent to them as possible, or jumpstart entirely new regions to start construction and start a new region. So which way are we going to start? Which way we are going to take? So to make new flows of water, to make new corridors of water, will how much will this how costly will this be? The first, what's the cost of this? Another question: Are Egyptian institutions capable of this? We have been undergoing, the Egyptian institutions have been undergoing drastic changes and drastic transformations. For example, we have seen research into into corn, and the Center of Scientific Research won't adopt it and would like to grow long staple cotton, but people concerned didn't agree to this. They say that we need to grow it in desert. You have talked about Tosca, and I think that Tosca is a catastrophic has been a catastrophic project, because temperatures at Tosca reaches as high as 60 centigrade degrees, so no man can live there, and even no animal or cow would be able of living at Tosca as either. So should we shut off talking? Should I stop talking about this at all and play somewhere else, or what? a senior irrigation expert, I think he's dead now, had said before he died that Toshka should be converted into an industrial zone. It cannot be cultivated at all. We have the biggest solar energy project in Egypt's upper Egypt, uh, Aswan. So are we going to launch things which are well planned, which are thoroughly planned? Atuf Bey is now cornered into answering these questions because seems to belong to the Ministry of Agriculture. Excuse me, I'd like to make a brief comment. I agree with your excellencies on what has been said. The conceptually speaking, how to utilize our water resources. I'd like to know how are we going to utilize our water resources, because wasted water in Egypt accounts for 70% of water we have. So we have to more effectively utilize waters. Actually, we have been talking about the efficiency of using water because wasted agricultural water accounts for 20 to 30% of the entire amount of water we have. We have two parallel economies. Two economies parallel, going two parallel lines, developed economy and an underdeveloped one. So we have to think, we have to rationalize our uses. You have been talking about wheat. It's not it's not necessarily borrow money to import wheat, but we can grow more effectively grown crops and then sell them, and the revenues of selling these effectively grown crops can be used to buy wheat rather than borrowing money from bigger countries to buy wheat for the people. People people have been living on two outdated concepts of irrigation. Now there has been the artificial intelligence and online decisions. Online decisions have to be made in order to address all agricultural related variables. So we have been talking about these challenges very briefly. The cost benefit. I know that today I can grow potatoes, but the problem is our capability is so low. In the Netherlands and the US and the boast very advanced agronomy, they can grow such a vegetable for as little as 100 Egyptian pounds. So if I actually, I can say that we now grow tomatoes within greenhouses, the cost of which ranges from 50 to 60 pounds, while an ordinary and average peasant would grow tomatoes at a cost of 2 or 3 pounds. So, and it seemed that the government and all state institutions are up in arms against anything that would be beneficial to an average user, small, simple user. All the talk we have been talking about is not applicable, because who's going to finance all these? the talk can draw on for a longer time, but there are certain things which we have to observe, to have to take well into account.